Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel, Laura and Tony. It's just me today, and I'd like to share with you 31 practical tips for long-term travel. We've gotten a lot of questions from our friends as well as our viewers and followers on Instagram and Facebook about how to prepare, things to know, what tips and insights we can share with them in regards to traveling long-term. In 2018, Laura and I got married, quit our jobs, and purchased a one-way ticket to Asia. We set off to Bangkok, Thailand, where we spent 6 months, and then we hopped over to Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, Korea, and Japan. We spent a year traveling through Asia, which was an amazing experience. We have lots of other vlogs on our channel documenting our travels as well as some tips. Today I'd like to share with you a comprehensive list on how you can prepare for a long trip like that. We made a lot of mistakes, and by sharing this we hope that you can avoid making the same mistakes that we did, but also feel confident as you set off on this long journey. These tips are applicable for anyone who is interested in short and long-term travel. It can be a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, or more. So let's jump right into it. Number one is probably one of the most important if you are traveling abroad, is to have a valid passport. The second tip is to get multiple copies of your passport photo. You never know when you're gonna have to provide a passport photo for an application at immigration or when applying for a visa. Typically when you apply for a visa, you have to provide 1 to 2 photos, so it's good to have at least a dozen along with your passport. Third tip is to get a travel-friendly debit or credit card. Getting assessed fees sucks a lot, and they can get really expensive, especially if you're using your card for multiple purposes. We oftentimes recommend having a little bit of cash on hand just for transactions at places that don't accept cards. Having a card that doesn't charge you fees or reimburses you for the fees that you're assessed is crucial. It has helped us save hundreds of dollars during the time that we've traveled, because not only do you get charged a fee by the retailer or the business that you're visiting, but you also get charged a fee by your banking institution. So we use Charles Schwab and have banked with them since we first started traveling abroad, and they have gone above and beyond to make sure that we're satisfied, in addition to reimbursing us for all of the fees that we've been assessed. I'll put a link to our blog on banking with Charles Schwab in the description below. Tip number 4 is, if you have a card, put a travel notice on it. In addition to Charles Schwab, we also bank with Bank of America, and through the app we put a travel notice, so we just put the dates that we're going to be traveling as well as the countries. That ensures that we will be able to use our cards in those countries. If you don't set a travel notice, then chances are your bank will put a pause on your account for security purposes. Tip number 5 is to prepare photocopies of all your important documents. So photocopy your passport, photocopy your birth certificate, your marriage license, your diploma, bank statements. If you are planning to travel long term, then chances are you will likely be using these documents for applying for visas, applying for leases for condos and apartments, applying for a driver's license. Maybe you're using them for medical purposes, or you're applying for a job. Having these documents available will ensure a smooth application process. Tip number 6 is to join expat groups on Facebook. There's usually an expat group for whatever destination you're looking to travel to. When we set off to Bangkok, we joined a handful of expat groups, one for the general expat, and then there are subgroups for specific categories. So if you are vegan or a vegetarian, then you can look for expat groups within that particular niche, because they can often provide recommendations on vegan restaurants or vegan grocery stores. There are also groups for properties, so if you're looking for an apartment or a condo or to purchase a house, then you can find groups that have listings available, and that's one way that we oftentimes find accommodations for any place that we travel to. Tip number 7 is to visit visa-free countries or visa-exempt countries. These are countries that don't require you to apply for a visa ahead of time. When Laura and I went to Thailand as a US passport holder, we get 30 days exempt, so we don't need to apply for a visa if we plan to stay there 30 days or less. Visiting visa exempt countries helps you save a little bit of money and also allows for a more flexible travel experience. If you don't have to apply for a visa, then you won't have to worry about doing visa runs, which Laura and I had to do a few times while living in Bangkok. And then you also save money by not having to do visa runs. When you have to fly to a different country, you obviously have to pay for your ticket, you have to pay for accommodations, and then you pay for the visa itself if you're returning to the country that requires a visa. Make sure to do your research on the countries that you can visit for free or the ones that you need to apply for a visa for. Tip number 8, apply for a visa if you're going to visit a country longer than the visa exempt period. So if you are from the US and you visit Thailand, but you plan to stay there for longer than 30 days, then do visit a US embassy. So when Laura and I went, because we were planning to stay there longer than 30 days, we went to the embassy and we applied for a visa for 60 days, which is the max that you can apply for. And then once you're in Thailand and approaching that 60 days, what you can do is you can apply for a 30-day extension, which gives you a total of 90 days. And at that point, once you expire 90 days, you have to leave the country, you have to do some sort of visa run, and this is entirely on a tourist basis. If you're teaching or you're working in Thailand, then the circumstances change a little bit, but that is the scenario that we were placed in, is at 90 days after the extension we had to leave the country, apply for another visa at the embassy in the country that we visited, and then go back to Thailand. Tip number 9, inform the State Department or whatever relevant governmental body in your country that you're going to be traveling to these countries for an extended period of time. And the reason being is that something might happen, and in the case of an emergency, the State Department or the embassy can track you down or help to expedite whatever circumstance that you're in. Tip number 10, get travel insurance, or don't at your own risk. In the case that something does happen, having travel insurance can be very, very helpful. Let's say your flight gets canceled or something happens back home, or you break a leg or an arm, then having travel insurance, depending on the coverage that you have, will help to cover whatever expenses are associated with your emergency. Number 11, get an international driver's license. If you are traveling to a place where you plan to drive, rent a scooter or a car or a motorbike, then it is important to have a driver's license. There can be an exception in certain countries where they allow tourists to drive vehicles without a license, but I like to err on the safer side of things and would encourage you to get an international driver's license when possible. In America, you can get it through AAA. AAA is an insurance company, and they also offer emergency roadside services and the international driver's license service. Tip number 12 is to set up some kind of automatic payment system. We use PayPal and Venmo. There are other apps like Cash, Zelle, there are tons of them. The reason being is because, one, you can easily transfer money, but in the case that you have an emergency where you lose your wallet or your purse, then having the ability to transfer money electronically is still available to you. Tip number 13 is to use packing organizers. I've seen a lot of nightmares in people's suitcases where they just toss everything in and try to zip it up and sit on it to try to close it. But if you use packing organizers, you can easily fit more things into your suitcase. I'll put a link in the description to the packing organizers that we use. They make life a whole lot easier. Tip number 14 is to pack travel size toiletries. Wherever you go in the world, you'll likely find a larger size. If you can wait to get that item at your final destination, do so. There may be certain instances where you can't because you require a specialty item, such as curly hair products. Laura has really beautiful curly hair, and there are certain products that she's been unable to find in certain places that we've traveled, such as Asia, where there are mostly straight-haired people. So she had to pack some of those things beforehand. So if you have a special need for whatever item, then make sure to pack it or do some research beforehand to see if it is or if it isn't available wherever you're going. Tip number 13 is to pack these essentials. These essentials including a portable battery pack, a universal power adapter, anti-diarrhea medicine, and wet wipes. You never know when you're going to have an emergency, you're going to get stranded, so having extra battery available is super important. And then there are some places in the world where they don't have toilet paper, and if you're used to using toilet paper when you go to the bathroom, having toilet paper or wet wipes does come in handy. Tip number 16 is to minimize your wardrobe. If you're traveling long term and you're pretty much living out of your suitcase, having less items will allow you to be more agile. What we recommend is for you to have more basic, versatile items. Tip number 17 is to unlock your phone. By unlocking your phone, you are able to purchase SIM cards in the respective countries that you're going to be traveling to for a very nominal cost. Tip number 18 is to not rely on online reviews. This is through Google, TripAdvisor, Yelp, whatever other travel websites that you are using to get recommendations. And the reason I say that is because people, for the most part, oftentimes leave reviews when they have bad or negative experiences, and that can skew the experience for other people. And then on the other hand of it, sometimes people leave very exaggerated reviews because it may be their first time experiencing a certain dish or an activity. Tip number 19 is to always have cash. You never know when you're going to go to a business that doesn't take card, or hop in a cab that doesn't accept debit card or Visa or whatever card you're using. So having cash on hand allows you to stay prepared for all types of situations where you need to use money. Tip number 20 is to shop at local markets. Local markets always have the freshest produce, and they always have cheaper prices. When we were living in Da Nang, Vietnam, I would go to the local market a few times a week. Produce was super cheap and always fresh, and I would like to shop on a regular basis so that we always had the freshest ingredients on hand. I love the local markets because you get to see local life come to action. People are talking and they're yelling and they're selling their goods and wares, and it stinks, and you see the fish flying around and the chickens. It's just a sight to see, and it's a part of the travel experience to be able to immerse yourself in the culture as much as possible, because that's where the locals shop, and it's usually the cheapest as well. Tip number 20, carry a tote bag. Try to reduce as much plastic waste as possible. Tip number 22, download Google Maps and Google Translate so that you can use it offline. One cool trick that you can use for Google Maps is that you can download offline maps so that when you don't have access to Wi-Fi or cellular service, you can still get around. Tip number 23, learn basic phrases, words, and numbers. Even though you aren't super fluent in a language, a little bit goes a long way, and the locals appreciate it. Tip number 24, be mindful of your attire. Depending on where you're visiting or the activity that you're about to participate in, wearing certain items may be forbidden, or they may suggest for you to wear certain things to enter a place of worship, such as a temple. Tip number 25, book your accommodations on booking.com or hotels.com if you're using it for short stays. The reason why we recommend using booking or hotels.com is because they offer free cancellation. We oftentimes use booking.com while we are researching several places, because if we find something that's a good rate and a good location, we'll just lock it in, and if we find something better, then we can cancel the previous booking for free without any penalty. So it's nice to have that option available. Tip number 26, for longer stays, 1 month to 6 months, or even a year or longer, consider booking on the ground. You'll oftentimes be able to book for cheaper than through Airbnb or any other accommodation website. One thing that we like to do is we like to book just a couple of days in a hotel or a guest house, and then during that time we'll set up viewings with agents or landlords to check out their apartments or condos that they have available, and they're usually willing to negotiate a lower rate than what is online because they don't have to pay a fee to these third parties. Tip number 27 is to eat local. It's a great way to experience the culture, to connect with people. Food is a great way to experience traveling in general. Tip number 28 is to limit eating and drinking out. If you are traveling abroad and you are living on a budget, then eating out and drinking out will eat up your budget. Tip number 29, attend meetup or networking events. It's a great way to connect with other expats, tourists, foreigners, but also a lot of locals attend these events, and it's a great way to build community wherever you are. Tip number 30, travel with an open mind, be okay with ambiguity. Sometimes things happen and you just have to go with the flow of it. It's not the end of the world and you just pick right up and keep going. Tip number 31, schedule in days to just relax or decompress. Have a day where you just Netflix and chill. Traveling long term can be quite stressful and physically draining on your body as well as your brain. Having to navigate a different culture can be a little taxing from time to time because you're figuring out how to communicate in a new language, you're figuring out directions, you're trying to negotiate with vendors, you're just adjusting, right? And so a lot of these unique experiences can be stressful on the body and mind, and so taking some time to relax is super important. Those are all of the tips for long-term travel. If I may have missed any, please just leave them in the comments below. Let us know what you thought about this video. Laura and I are going to be traveling to Colombia, Mexico, and Guatemala in just a couple of weeks, and we're going to be applying these same tips to our upcoming travels as well. If you enjoyed this, please consider giving this a like, and if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to our channel. One of our goals this year is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and as of this recording we are at about 720 subscribers, so we're not too far off, but you can help us get there a little bit sooner. Even though you're just one subscriber is a whole lot to us, and we appreciate every subscriber that we get. So thank you for watching this, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace. Take 2. Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel, Laura and Tony. It's just me today, and today I'd like to share with you 31 tips on in and Japan. Am I missing any? Tip number 14 is to track